Hello once again, Monster Hobbies Model Car Garage Mechanics. Welcome back to another great unboxing video. So today we're going to be looking at AMT's 1923 Ford Model T Roadster kit. Now what makes this one unique is that it's not based on a 1925 Model T Ford. It's actually based on the panel van kit. And the panel van also ends up being the depot hack kit. So that's what makes this thing quite unique, is that AMT has a series of 23 Ford Model Ts. Now, for you guys that have been watching all these videos, you know that there's a lot of Model T kits out there. And this is my last AMT Model T kit to unbox. So, whew. That was quite a lot of them. So thankfully that's over with. So without further delay, let's see this one. And then we don't have to see any more from AMT unless there's something that I missed, like a Phaeton version of this or a sedan, but let's hope not. So at any rate, let's go down to the bench and see what's in the box. Now let's go all the way back to 1923 as we check out this amazing 1923 Ford Model T Roadster from AMT. Now this kit originally came out in the Street Rod set, so this was in the early 70s, but this is the newer Round 2 re-release, and you can build this either way, stock or Street Rod. One thing that I think is that, remember I showed you the other two vans just a few seconds ago? This kit has the hot rod parts, and because they're all based off of the same frame and everything, I do believe that if you got a few of these, you could build hot rod versions of the vans. So how cool is that? Now looking at the side of the box, we can see the factory stock 23T Roadster, and that's a version that I'm going to be building because I'm trying to build a diorama that shows life in 1927 so that it can be Model T heavy with a few other cars in there, like the Beverly Hills Oldsmobile, which I'll also be building stock. And here is the side, and it says you could also build it as a custom modified street rod. Antique car buffs and rodders agree on one thing. The 23 Model T Roadster is a desirable piece of machinery. With this kit you can build the original Tin Lizzie shown here, or a classic street machine as shown on the cover. Rod version includes a 283 V8, custom suspension, slotted mag wheels, and low-profile wide tires. Build your favorite. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but the 283 is a Chevy motor. Now on this side of the box we see the stock 4-cylinder engine. Now I do believe the artist colored this red so you could actually see the block, because if it was all black, you wouldn't be able to really define this as what you're looking at. Although it would be highlighted, so maybe. Okay, we've got authentic stock tires. Now for the street rod, we have the custom shift lever. Then take a look at how the artist did chrome. That looks really like chrome, doesn't it? We've got the heavy-duty rear axle, the street rod rear spring, and the street rod dropped tube axle. So now let's rip the cover off this thing and see what's inside. Now let's lift the lid on this great model kit and see what's inside. So what we have is our instruction sheet right away, the decals underneath, which are covered. I got this model from my friend John Harry's estate. So there's our chrome parts tree. Not much on there, actually. Then we've got our glass and our tires in a bag. And then we've got our street rod tires and the axles there. Then a bag with some white parts trees, including the fenders. We also have our little Roadster body and the rest of the parts. So here we get into our 23 Ford T Roadster. Read this part before you begin. Tells you how to build the model and what to look out for. So here we have the stock engine. The upper radiator hose is separate. Cylinder head. We've got the starter to the left side of the bell housing. Two-piece Ford Model T engine block. The front cover is a separate piece. The generator sticking out the side. Now the generator is a stock option here because they use the magnetos, but it's in there. We have the exhaust pipe, intake, manifold, and exhaust, which goes on the side. says back here is the exhaust pipe location, and then we have our oil and transmission pan gluing up underneath. Now here is the engine that you won't find in any of the other T vans, but if you wanted to build the hot rod and use this engine in those other kits, you could. This is the Chevy 289. Now this engine, oh yeah, there's the Y heads. This engine was in the Corvettes as well as the 57 Chevys as the upgraded engine. So we have the valve covers, the cylinder heads, we have the log manifold and our triple carbs, and I do believe there's a set for each side. We also have these little air filters which go on top. And then right and left hand side of the engine block, two-piece transmission, oil pan, starter motor. We have an alternator up here, front timing chain cover, belts, and the pulleys, as well as the fan. So again, a nice little Corvette style motor in here, 57 Chevy block, whatever, in order to heat up your hot rod T Roadster. Part 2 shows our wheels and tires going together. Now these ones have the actual wheel hubs and the separate tires which go on top instead of being molded as one piece. And here we have our street rod wheels with the mag wheels, deep dish in the back, the rubber tires, and then our wheel retainers with a long boss. And then up front it's all short. So we've got our mag wheels, the tires, and the backs. Now these are these slot style mag wheels. So again, really cool stuff. Here we have the factory stock chassis. And this one you have to really build up separately, so make sure you design up a jig in order to hold all these pieces in proper alignment. So we've got the two frame rails, we've got the stock transmission support, the stock front crossmember, the stock rear crossmember, the rear spring, the rear axle, and torque tube assembly. Then our wheels will go through here on metal axles. We have the front axle and spring here. The end of the steering column will go on here on our tie rod, and our front radius rods will glue up, and this part goes to the oil pan of the engine. Then we have our two-piece exhaust on here, and we have the spare tire mounts being glued up onto the back of the rear crossmember. For the custom version, we have our two-piece chrome rear axle as well as our chrome rear spring, which is lower than the stock version. We have the rear radius rods and a drive shaft on here going to the transmission of our small block Chevy. Two frame rails, transmission support, front crossmember, rear crossmember, just like the stock version. Then we have the steering linkage as well as these nice rails up front, chrome dropped axle and the tie rod, and then our wheels going in, and like the 27 Ford T's, we have the little cap gluing onto the end. So make sure that this area here is nice and smooth so that your front wheels will rotate freely. Now, like I was saying before, you could use this assembly on those vans in order to make up your own custom van. Here we have the assembly for stock, our final assembly. And as you can see, there's a lot going on. So we have the frame down below, and then we have right and left hand side fenders, and then the floor glues on. So that's very different from the 25 kits where these are all one piece. We have the handbrake going down in the hole, which connects into a little area on the side of the engine. We also have these filler panels which are gluing in here, and our tow board. There's our pedals. We have the hood, the firewall, the body itself, the instrument panel being glued in place, the turtle deck, and it's got a note, fits flush with back of floor. There we have the folded top, which is different from the 25 kits. There's some rails in here that are unique. We also have the seat cushion and the seat itself with the gas tank underneath, and our two-piece windshield. Then we've got our headlights. Now, these ones actually have little legs on the bottom, whereas the 25 had the pins that stuck up. We have the heater tank, or radiator header tank here, and the cap, the radiator itself, and the crank. As well as out back, we have the two-piece spare tire. So all this goes together. Oh, I forgot this, the steering wheel and the steering column. So all this goes together, and you will have a completed factory stock 23 Model T Roadster. And for you guys wanting to build the street Roadster, here we have, again, the bucket all going together. Now we have a different type of firewall in here. Our steering wheel goes on a straight steering column. Then we've got our, what do you call these? The fenders going on the sides, as well as the floor in here, headlights and the radiator, and then we've got our hood sticking up. We have side pipes which locate to the exhaust headers, and then the muffler part going in the back. We also have a gear shift lever onto the floor. So overall, again, nice custom pieces. And like I was saying, if you wanted the van, you would just replace this section in here with the van components, or even the depot hack. Build up a hot rod depot hack. We'll start our review by looking at this first parts tree here. And what we have is our rear axle with the radius rods, as well as our differential and the torque tube up the center. We have our steering column. We've got our front spring and axle assembly. We have our tie rods. We've got our radius rods here, exhaust pipe, radiator hose. Or actually, I think this is the front of the exhaust pipe going into the engine. We have our 3 pedals here, rear spring. We've got the front brace where the radiator fits in. We have headlights. We've got our radiator cap right there. The tank on top of the radiator itself. Steering wheel. Then we've got our cylinder head, our right and left hand side of the engine block, exhaust intake manifold and updraft carburetor, oil pan and transmission pan, front timing chain cover. We have the upper radiator hose. We also have our starter motor, our generator, our crank, and the fan. Now let's take this up into the camera. Just take a look at some of the detail on here. Nice detail on the cylinder head. You can see the bolts as well as the spark plugs up the middle. Right and left hand side engine block looks correct. You can even see the cylinders for the cylinders to go up and down in. Again, great detail on here. Spring looks nice. Nice detail on the rear axle. Turning it over, we can see some mold marks. We do have little bolts on the top of the transmission and oil pan, so those will look nice once you get the engine glued together. There are mold marks that'll have to be flattened out in order for this to fit together nicely, but overall, for such an old kit, it is still pretty cool to look at. The next parts tree includes the radiator, the rear spare tire mount, our frame rails, the front crossover for the transmission to sit on. We also have the spare tire, inner and outer, those little filler panels that go on the fenders, the rear axle, the rear spring housing right here. We also have the folded down top. Now here it's different from the 25 kits because you can see all the bracing in here, which is really nice. Then we've got our 4 wheels up in here. So bringing this up to the camera, you can see some nice detail in the radiator. There's those braces again on our top. Look at the wheels, they look correct. Now, Model T wheels, the rim's actually unbolted from the spokes. So that's how they changed tire. That's why you see the spare tire looking like this. Now we've got a 1923 license plate in the back. And then our frame rails are kind of hollow on this side. But again, there are mold marks everywhere which need to be cleaned up in order for this to look really nice. You can see the rear wheels have the bigger circles in the back here. That's because that's where the drum brakes would be. And up front, there are no drum brakes. And that is because they couldn't figure out how to make brake lines turn with the front wheels until much later. Now here we have the 3 components that make up our body for our Roadster, minus the fenders of course. We have the hood, we also have the body itself, and the turtle deck in the back. Now one thing that I have noticed on this is there is a difference between this one and the 25 kit. Now looking at the sides, we have pretty much the same hood. Again, really nicely done, quite simple. But on the body, remember how in a previous video I said that only the passenger side door opened and there was 2 hinges molded here and here? Well, this one, it's like an indentation, just like on the driver's side. So that's the difference of the body. But other than that, it's pretty much the same typical body shell between 23 and 25, the AMT kits, that is. Now, I'm not too sure how it really looks on a 23. I can imagine that the hinges would be in there. As for the turtle deck, the hinges are a lot softer on here than they are on the 25 release. But overall, again, it's the same basic shape and design, but this one has quite a bit of flash. Now, these do fit together in the same way as the 25T kit, with a little tab in the back and a little area there in order for that to fit together. And I'm going to have to get rid of all these little sprue bits that are in here, left over from the mold. But overall, I think this should be easy to clean up and will look pretty much like the other 25T kits, although it's a 23. On this parts tree, we have the separate fenders, as well as the floor pan and our kick panel for where our feet go, as well as the pedals. We have a completely different dashboard design than the 25 Model Ts, and we have the windshield here, a different sort of firewall. We've got the seat bottom and the seat back with the gas can in here, or the gas tank under the seat, just like how it's supposed to be on the real Model T. Now let's bring this up to the camera. Now, one thing I noticed here on this gas can is that there are no mold marks in the corners, unlike the 25T kit. So that means that I don't really have to clean up in there, which is nice. The seat texture is quite a bit different on the 23T. There's a little more of a design in it than the 25. The dashboard doesn't quite have the big pins sticking out of it like the 25 does. Or sorry, the firewall. But the dashboard here, it has two gauges. Well, one's a gauge, and I think one is sort of like the automatic choke or something to that effect to get it started. And then here it's got this interesting piece. I'm not sure if the steering wheel is supposed to go through there somehow. At any rate, the floor pan looks really nice. Again, you've got that wood detail that gets covered over by the car. And the kick panel is cool because it's got the Ford name right there. So if you ever have this on your shelf all finished with the 25 sitting beside it, the way to remember what the 23 is that the 23 says Ford on that panel. So again, really nice detail in here. Now we got the mold marks underneath as well as some mold release agent that I'm going to have to clean up. But overall, this is looking quite nice. Should be good. Should be comparable to the vans when you build it. This parts tree contains all our custom pieces for our 23 Ford, and what we have here is that nice Chevy 283 engine block, right and left hand sides. We also have a drive shaft here, our new firewall, our transmission, cylinder heads. We've got the tricarbs, 2 sets of tricarbs, our starter motor, as well as these radius rods, front and rear. We've got cross member braces. These are different from the stock one, so that is cool, probably to fit the Buick engine in. We also, or the Chevy engine. We also have our belts and pulleys here. We've got our exhaust headers and more pipes, as well as our wheel backs and the front timing chain cover. So bringing this up to the camera, you can see the nice detail on that transmission right in there. And flipping it over, there's a timing chain cover. Again, we do have mold marks in here, mold release agents. So you're going to have to clean those up. The tricarbs look quite nice. And then our wheel backs. So again, some interesting parts. Would be cool to have this parts tree, a few of these parts trees, just to hot rod up those trucks and the depot hack. Here we have our chrome, our glorious chrome. And what we have is the chrome valve covers. We've got a chrome distributor, exhaust dumps. We've got a gear shift lever here. We have the air filters. And then we have the rear spring right there, as well as the little hubcaps for those front wheels. And here's the wheels for the back. And we've got our chrome-plated fan right here, oil pan, the fuel log for the carburetors to mount on. And then we have the front and rear of the differential, which is really heavy duty here, alternator, and the dropped chrome axles. So really you need that other white parts tree and these chrome parts in order to build the hot rod. But again, really cool looking. The slot wheels are neat. It's cool to see 4 openings instead of 5. So there's those front wheels again. Remember to really open those holes so that they'll go through that front axle, because they need to fit on there. So you need to scrape off the chrome entirely from here outward, like that. Look at that rear differential. I think the last time I've seen a differential like this is in the 33 Willys kit. So again, something super heavy duty that'll take the torque. I think it's supposed to be a Ford 9-inch, but I don't know, that looks really big. So maybe it's a Ford 18-inch, I don't know. Twice as big. But overall, again, these look really nice. Looks like the air filters go right on the carburetor in those holes in the back. So again, cool stuff. Yeah, should dress up your rod and make it look terrific. Now in this bag we have the glass components, which just consists of the headlights and the window for the front windshield. So I'm just going to leave it in the bag so I don't end up losing it. But basically there are lines on the headlights and you want them to be facing north and south in the car, just like that. On this parts tree are wonderful rubber tires for this Model T. Now these are basically the same as the ones in the 25T kit, but again, it's always nice. Now there isn't much rubber on here to put any names on or whatever, but they do give you this really nice tread that the camera's having a little bit of problem picking up on. There it is there. Again, pretty simplistic. You have to carefully cut this web out the center and then cut the knobs off here and here and put them on the rim and then sand them, and that will make them look nice and used on the road. Here's our tires for our 1923 Ford Model T Street Rod. These are wonderful. You've got 2 smaller ones for the front, as well as 2 big ones in the rear, and I really love how AMT pad printed on the Goodyear lettering on here. Now let's just move the big ones to the side and take a look at the little one. Here you can see the wonderful tread pattern on this tire. Nice and tight. Looks to scale just like the real car. If you don't want the Goodyear lettering on this side, you have no lettering, so you could just easily do the black wall. But again, take a look at how precise that is. That is amazing. Switching to the rear tires, look at the tread pattern on there. Just like the real thing, only smaller. Again, really awesome looking. Here you have Goodyear lettering that's actually raised, whereas on this side it's smooth, but it does actually have the raised tire size in the bottom of this, so that's cool. Now if you don't use these on this car, you can use them on other ones as well. But again, I like the edges of the tire as well. Overall, really beautiful stuff. So yeah, these tires are well worth it. Look just like real. And now the moment we've all been waiting for, our reveal of the decals. So let's take the backing paper off and see what we have. Wow, look at these. Really cool flames on here. These ones are white, and it almost looks like there's stripes inside as well. Again, really cool looking. Now, if you don't care for these, they have the traditional yellow, orange, and red flames with the blue pinstripe outline. So something more traditional. You can also add in these 8 balls and these really cool like skull and crossbone in the red circle with the blue outline. Now we have the AMT decal here and here, so you can add those anywhere you like, as well as Goodyear's for the tires. Now we have a whole bunch of license plates. We have a generic 1923 one for your stock Model T, as well as these Florida plates, 3Z5318. Now, I'm not too sure what license plate this is. I can't really read here. I think it's like Michigan or something. Not 100% sure. But down here we have California plates. These ones are 670-207. And here we got California 3CZ023. So again, really cool looking decal sheet. The color registration on this is great. And you could use these flames on your 25 Model Ts if you like. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at our 1927 Ford Model T Roadster. And thankfully, that's all we have for Model Ts. So now I've got to sit down and build all of them. The 23s, the 25s, and the 27s. And boy, that's going to be quite the display once it's all done. So if you want some great model car kits, don't forget to check out our website at www.monster-hobbies.ca, where you can see what I have for sale. And I can ship all the way around the world. So if you enjoyed these videos, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel with all your friends and family. If you want to support me, click that join button, and that way you can contribute each month a little tiny bit. I think it's $3, which is really nothing in this modern age. But that money will help this channel grow and hopefully help me get my hobby shop open again for 2025. So until next time, everyone, happy modeling, and we'll see you in the next video.